Okay, I'll start all over again. So welcome everybody to this workshop on solidarity economy and social ecology. We will be exploring what each framework movement is and what are the differences, what are the commonalities, how do they relate to each other, and how can we work more closely together. My name is Emily Kawano, she, her pronouns. I am the co-coordinator of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network. My day job is I'm the co-director of Wellspring Cooperative based in Springfield, Mass. And we do co-op development, worker co-op development, as well as solidarity economy initiatives. I'm an economist by training, but went into studied economics with the intention of making it more useful for social movement. So that's where I've ended up. I'm happy to stop there. Rob, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi all. My name is Rob Persons. I'm the I'm the development director at the Institute for Social Ecology. The ISC is an institute for radical popular education around the ideas of social ecology, which you'll learn a lot more about shortly. We do online classes, events. We have a mentorship program, and we do all sorts of programming around political education, movement development. I'll actually like to invite you all to an event we're doing in Lexington, Kentucky in the first week of August. That is going to be amazing, that you can learn a lot more about all these ideas there. And there's also some room for virtual participation as well. I'll drop those links in the chat. And yeah, I'm excited to talk with you all this evening.
So I don't know for other people, but Rob, you're continuing to freeze. I don't know if I'm freezing for people. I hope things go smoothly and we don't have a choppy Zoom webinar. But yeah, on my end it's a little choppy. So bear with us. Not much we can do about that. So the sort of flow of this workshop is I'm going to start with talking about this current moment and why solidarity economy is more important than ever. And some reflection, define solidarity economy, a little bit of state of the movement, and then finish up with, what's the relationship? How do the solidarity economy and social ecology relate? And then Rob is gonna take some time to do somewhat similar kind of arc, and then we should have about half an hour or so for Q&A. So you are most welcome as we're presenting to drop questions into the chat, and Kelly is kind of monitoring that, and we'll sort of take note as well. So feel free to drop in your questions and comments. I think with that we'll get going. I am going to share some slides. So, you know what? I think, Kelly, you're going to have to allow share.
I can do that. 1 second.
Okay. Yes, this is being recorded, and yes, we will share it out. The slide deck also, my slide deck is available. Rob, I'm assuming that you're happy to share your slide deck as well, right? Yeah.
Sure. So we'll drop here. I could share your.
We'll drop them both into the chat so you can review those at your leisure.
Okay. Just tell me when you want to go on to the next slide.
Okay, but I think I need to share when we get to the word cloud. We can try. Let's try. Let's see what happens.
Can we get Emily the fruit? Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes with the word cloud. Okay, so as you are all probably aware, we are in this historic moment, you know, a once in a generation, once in two generation kind of moment where there are these multiple converging crises. You know, recently we went through COVID, there were the racial justice uprisings. Now we're, you know, there's the threat of global, you know, wars that are spreading and becoming, you know, wider conflagrations. There's all the climate change disasters. And of course, we're no longer what I used to say, like there's this slide towards fascism. I think we're there. Right? So it's a scary moment for sure. But whenever there's a crisis, and given that we have all these multiple crises, it also creates an opportunity. It creates an opportunity for change because people's faith in the status quo has been shaken. And so this is like this really amazing opportunity to push for a new system, a new economy, a new world, a post-capitalist world, which is what we'll both be talking about. Yeah, so next slide. So we will be talking about post-capitalism, moving beyond capitalism. But before we get there, I want to define capitalism. We're going to start with this Mentimeter. Can you click on that link and let's see what happens?
And Emily, the settings should be now that once Rob unshares it, you should be able to share yourself if you prefer.
Okay. So it's view only. Yeah, I better share because this. Hopefully this works for me. Oh, damn. Oh, how frustrating. It's telling me to log in. I was logged in. Let's try this. You know what? Let's not do that. Then. We're going to skip the word cloud. I'll go back to this slide. Oh. So it's sort of too bad because it's fun to do this. If people want to if you can shout out, can anybody shout out? Just a few, we'll just take like 20 seconds. What does capitalism mean to you?
The extraction of the surplus value of the labor of the worker.
Yeah.
Cool. What else?
Exploitation.
What else?
The rich are getting rich at the expense of the workers and anybody else in this country.
What else?
Instantiation of greed.
Poverty.
Keep them coming. Just shout it out. It doesn't matter if you're talking over each other. It's fine.
Destroying natural resources.
What else?
Infinite
Making
growth.
profits the most important thing. Profit, profit, profit.
Okay, profits, infinite growth. Yeah.
Wage
Couple more
slavery.
seconds. Wage slavery. What else? Okay, cool. I mean, it's a snapshot. And that's how capitalism to some extent feels. Having been involved in the Center for Popular Economics, so the Center for Popular Economics is a collective of progressive to radical economists, and our mission was to help people understand how the economy works or doesn't work, as the case may be. And we would often hear people say, oh, capitalism, there's so many definitions, it's really hard to define. So you really can't, you just can't define capitalism. And then it becomes this really mushy catch-all for everything that we on the, at least on the left, don't like. And that doesn't really work. We need a little bit better definition. So this is the definition that the Center for Popular Economics has been using for more than 40 years. These 5 characteristics, you need them all. One alone will not define capitalism. So first of all, there's a private ownership of the means of production, or sometimes we call them the MOPs. And the MOPs are just this, it's just the stuff that you need to produce things. It's the land, it's your factories, it's your tools, it's your inputs. Right? Those are your MOPs. Those MOPs are privately owned. The owners are the capitalists, right? They own it, they control it, and they control the profits. The second bullet point is wage labor, right? Those are the workers. The workers do not own the means of production. They can fight for better wages, they can fight for better working conditions, but they ultimately do not. They can fight, they can unionize, but they don't control the whole shebang, right? The capitalist control. Right there, inevitably, intrinsically, unavoidably, you have class conflict. You have class struggle, because the capitalists are trying to do the third bullet point, maximizing profit. Generally, there are many ways to do this, but very often on the backs of the workers, right? Trying to depress wages, degrade working conditions, make workers work faster, etc. So that class struggle, that class conflict is baked into capitalism. Notwithstanding the fact that there are some there are some decent capitalists that try to do right by their workers and give them a say and treat them relatively equitably, but as a system, class conflict is baked in. The fourth bullet point is commodity production, which means it's production for sale and profit and not necessarily for use. And so there are shortages of things that are really important, that are really necessary, but they're not so profitable. So for example, affordable housing is in short supply, partly because great big McMansions are much more profitable to build. It's an example. The fifth bullet point is markets exchange. All of this is mediated through the marketplace. So those 5 things together define capitalism. One reason it's important is that I've heard people working in a worker co-op say, oh yeah, we're a capitalist enterprise. We're a capitalist enterprise because we do commodity production, and because we buy, we buy and sell on the market. So what they don't have, a worker co-op does not have, is that separation between private ownership of the MOPs and workers and wage labor, right? The workers are the owners, right? So they're not a capitalist enterprise. So it's important to have a basic understanding of what is capitalism. The other reason why it's important to understand what is capitalism, if you don't understand what is capitalism, you could be pushing for reforms that strengthen capitalism, right? If a lack of clarity about what capitalism is can easily lead to just reforming and thereby strengthening capitalism. So for example, the New Deal really saved capitalism at a time when there were a lot of challenges. Socialist communist party movement was strong. And this was a way to kind of calm things down, make capitalism feel more kind and caring, right? And it really did. The New Deal really saved capitalism. And also clarity about what our long-term vision is, where we're trying to get, will ensure that we're building transformative reforms, or sometimes called non-reformist reforms. We're building towards a new system beyond capitalism, and not just trying to reform within the context of capitalism. An example also would be the Green New Deal, right? There could be a capitalist version where, these capitalist businesses are the ones that capture the gains in terms of solar or wind power or whatever it might be. Or we could be talking about community ownership and control, or worker owned and controlled businesses. So it's really important to have some basic understanding of what is capitalism. So I'm going to talk about these two big buckets of economic systems. So one is capitalist, the other is post-capitalist. So the first thing that I want to just point out is that there are many types of post-capitalist models, frameworks. Solidarity economy embraces ones that are democratic. So democratic forms of socialism, for example, other solidarity economy frameworks that might not even have a name, right? But what solidarity economy definitely rejects, does not embrace, are authoritarian forms of whether it's socialism or any other system, right? Not non-democratic forms of economy and government. Absolutely not something that solidarity economy embraces. I will go more into the definition of solidarity economy in a second. I just wanted to get that out of the way. So capitalism, right? There are many different models of capitalism. Here are three. Neoliberalism, which is kind of what we see now, cutthroat capitalism, laissez-faire, free trade, free market. That being said, there's an awful lot of hypocrisy about that, right? Like that's waved around as the principles, but in reality, when there's a need for all kinds of controls put on this, that, or the other, or tariffs that suit corporations, it happens. So lots of hypocrisy in neoliberalism. New Deal, coming out of the Great Depression, really was a much, like support for a social welfare state, support for the role of the government in stabilizing the economy, a role for the government in regulating the economy, right? And promoting more, being involved in promoting the social good, right? A kinder, gentler version compared to neoliberalism. Social democracy, think of Scandinavia, right? Like it's the New Deal on steroids, super, super generous social welfare state, much greater control from the government over corporations and this, that, and the other. Still, and this is a little bit debatable, I would call that still capitalist, because the capitalist corporations still wield an undue amount of power and influence and control in the economy. So when we talk about system change, we're talking about post-capitalism. Some people talk about system change as a return to basically New Deal, right? New Deal capitalism. So just to make that clear. Okay, so now we're gonna shift to solidarity economy and what it is. And so I'm gonna ask you to indulge me, and we're gonna do a little guided visualization. So if you would, close your eyes. Gonna be very quick. Close your eyes, imagine that this other world, another world, your vision of a more just, sustainable, etc. world, of a better world has come to pass, right? We're there. Imagine that you start off, you're in your house. Feel for a couple seconds what your house is like. Now you're walking out your door. You're headed somewhere. Choose your own destination. You're headed somewhere. How are you getting there? Are you on a bicycle? Are you walking? Do you have some other kind of vehicle? Or are you astral projecting? How are you making your journey? However you're making your journey, what do you see along the way? What do you hear? What do you smell? Do you see other people? Do you know those people? What's your relationship to those people? And other creatures, and Mother Nature. Feel that. And now you arrive at your destination, and you're there to do something, whatever it might be. It might be socializing, it might be a hobby, it might be some kind of work or project. So feel that for a few seconds. Okay, that was a quick guided visualization of your other world. And so reflect now on what values underpin your vision. And just, again, popcorn style, just shout them out. What values underpin that vision? Go.
Economic security.
Economic security. What else?
Egalitarianism.
Great. What else?
Sustainability.
Great. What else?
Environmental health.
Great. What else?
Creativity.
Perfect. Keep them coming. What else?
Community.
Compassion.
Uh-huh.
Flexibility.
Flexibility. What else?
Regenerativity.
Regenerativity. What else?
Mutualism.
Mutualism. Great. What else?
Shared power.
Shared power. Couple more. Keep 'em
Living
coming.
within planetary boundaries.
Great. What else?
Connectedness.
Yep. One more. Sorry?
Neighbors.
Neighbors. Excellent. Okay.
Cooperation, not competition.
Perfect. So now I'm going to move into, so remember some of those things that were thrown out. Solidarity economy, I'm moving into the definition of solidarity economy. It's really grounded in values. The US Solidarity Economy Network uses these 5. It'll look slightly different in different parts of the world, different communities, but these really capture a common set of values. So one is solidarity, and people mention these kind of things, cooperation, mutualism, right? People mention a lot of things about democracy. So we talk about democracy in all areas, participatory democracy in politics and work and community. People talked a lot about equity, right? We talk about equity in all dimensions. So race, class, gender, ability, et cetera, right? People mentioned sustainability, right? Embracing the rights of Mother Earth. And the last one that people didn't mention, but is very important, is pluralism. So what that means, it's not a one-size-fits-all model, right? There are many paths to this better world. There are many paths to this more just, sustainable, equitable, democratic world, right? Different things are going to work in different places, in different cultures, at different times, right? So instead of throwing stones about who's got the best model, let's accept that there are many different paths. So that's really important, that pluralism. But mind you, that pluralism isn't saying many different paths, including capitalism. We're still very clear that we do not believe that we're going to really get to that better world by reforming capitalism. And the reasons why would be a whole nother workshop. Okay, so here's a more formal definition of solidarity economy. It comes both out of USN, the US Solidarity Economy Network, and RIPES. RIPES is the International Solidarity Economy Network. So RIPES engaged in a 2-year international consultation process. And the goal was to kind of try to set a common foundation of understanding of what is solidarity economy. So here we go. Number 1, it's a framework, right? It's a framework that connects the solidarity economy practices and, of course, the people that are aligned with these values, right? And all of this is articulating a post-capitalist world, right? We're very clear about that. So it's a framework connecting practices aligned with these values, all articulating and building and realizing a post-capitalist world. It is also a global movement. RIPES, which I already mentioned, exists on all the continents except for Antarctica, and we're working on that, those cooperative penguins. The International Labor Organization runs an annual Solidarity Economy Academy. The United Nations has a task force on the solidarity economy. The solidarity economy is enshrined in the constitutions of Bolivia and Ecuador, and there are about a dozen countries that have national solidarity economy policy frameworks, which means that generally the directive is that all the departments are meant to support solidarity economy. So there's really a lot of there on a global level, and as well as what's going on here. So just imagine solidarity economy in your life. Instead of capitalism, we have solidarity economy. Instead of a police state, we have transformative justice. Instead of monopolies, we have community control. Instead of a boss, we have, you're a worker owner. Instead of a landlord, maybe you're living on a community land trust. Property, instead of banks, we have credit unions, which are by definition a form of cooperatives. And then instead of just representative democracy, we have participatory democracy. So a little snapshot what it might look like. This slide, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time. Again, you have the slide deck, but in all of these economic spheres, there are many examples of actually existing successful solidarity economy practices. Some are old, ancient, in fact. Some are relatively new. Some are what would be considered alternative. Some are very mainstream. For example, if you look under governance, right, some public sector things are probably keepers, right? Public education, public schools is probably a keeper, right? Very mainstream. But you can browse this, you can browse this list on your own. But the point is there is a huge foundation to build on. We're not starting from scratch. The challenge really is how to connect all these, and this is not the definitive list. There are many other examples. How to connect it up so it appears and operates like a system. I'm going to skip this for now because I don't know how much time I have. Am I almost out of time? Did anybody notice? I can't even see a clock. All right, so I don't know. I'm just going to finish up with this metaphor about imaginal cells. So when a caterpillar spins its chrysalis, its body starts breaking down into this nutrient-rich goop. And within that goop are these things called imaginal cells. And those imaginal cells have a vision of what it could be that is so foreign, so different, that what is left of the caterpillar's immune system starts to attack those imaginal cells and kills them. But some imaginal cells survive and they recognize each other as having a common vision. So they start finding each other, they start clumping together, and as they clump together, they're better able to withstand the attacks of the immune system. And then, so they continue to come together, they continue to clump, and then they start to specialize. So some become an eye, and some become a leg, and some become a wing, until it emerges as this entirely new creature, the butterfly. The reason why that's a nice metaphor for solidarity economy is that if you look back to this one, right now, these are like imaginal cells. They're kind of separated, sundered from each other. They're isolated from each other. And, this metaphor is all about, like, if these things can start seeing each other as having a common purpose of building a new world and a new economy, and start coming together, working together, so that it's really working like a system, a solidarity economy. That's what the solidarity economy framework provides, as a skeleton to connect all of these. I'll just wrap by saying, what's the relationship? So we've covered what is solidarity economy. I know that was pretty quick, but hopefully you get a sense. How are they similar, aligned, different? How do they relate to each other? So solidarity economy, I hope you got a sense of, it's a very big tent. It's very pluralistic. We would see social ecology as one particular approach, model, framework, whatever you decide to call it, right? But it has some particular guideposts or values, definitions that are particular to social ecology. As for everything I know about social ecology, it is perfectly well aligned. So we would consider like solidarity economy is a big tent. We would see social ecology as one approach. And how can we be better connected and mutually supportive? I mean, even just starting with this, we've had lots of conversations. Certainly, I've done some workshops at ISC Institute. I mean, we know each other, we work together, we go to each other's conferences, right? So, yeah, we're always looking for opportunities to be mutually supportive. No doubt we could do better. I look forward to deepening those relationships, and I will stop there. Right.
Thank you
turn
so
it over
much,
to Rob.
Emily.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Emily. That was amazing. And yeah, I think we have a lot to learn from the solidarity economy framework, and you're one of the best at breaking it down in very understandable ways without sacrificing any complexity. So I think I love hearing when you talk about solidarity economy. So I'm going to shift into talking about social ecology now. And thank you all for attending this event. So I have a lot. Social ecology is a pretty complex and big topic, so I'm going to try to do my best at explaining it in succinct terms. And yeah, so I have a lot to say, so let me just get right into it. So the core thesis of social ecology is that the ecological crisis is fundamentally a social crisis. Humanity is not inherently predisposed to destroy nature. The ways in which the human relationship with nature has become one of destruction and exploitation is one that has developed through social systems that then are reapplied onto nature. So kind of the idea of dominating nature comes from the idea of dominating other human beings. And when we talk about social crises, we're talking about things like capitalism, patriarchy, colonialism, the state, ways of kind of asserting oneself over the other. And kind of ultimate idea of social ecology is that if we're going to create an ecological society, we need to address these forms of domination within humanity. So social ecology is also a reconstructive vision for a future beyond these systems of domination, which I'll get into what the vision of that is. And some of the key questions that kind of undergird what the voluminous work of social ecologists are trying to address is what is nature, what is humanity's place in nature, and what is the relationship between society and nature. So here are some big well-known social ecologists. We have Murray Bookchin with the ice cream, Abdullah Öcalan on the bottom, and Dan Chodorkov, the co-founder of the ISC, in the top right. So the origins of social ecology. I'm going to talk a little bit about what questions social ecology was responding to. So you have, Emily mentioned a little bit in the description of the New Deal. You have, before World War I, an extremely radical, what they call the old left. So this is like primarily like the old classic Marxist and anarchist left, where you could have from the Great Depression to, and before the Great Depression, you have the Socialist Party of America winning mayoral elections, Eugene Debs getting 5-10% of the presidential vote and whatnot, under a explicitly socialist party. You have socialist organizations being able to bring out hundreds of thousands of people into the streets under red and black flags, and this movement kind of culminates and dissipates after World War II. And you have a rise of mass consumer society and really a de-radicalization. And Murray Bookchin, who is pictured there, the primary kind of theoretical architect of social ecology, was of the generation of the old left and is kind of one of the few that maintained radicalism through this kind of period of de-radicalization. And was looking at questions like alienation, public health, subjectivity in the mass consumer world, and was in this kind of avant-garde New York City circles, and began looking at the way that chemicals and food and fertilizers and other forms of industrial pollutants began impacting public health, and seeing the connection between a capital accumulation and the kind of poisoning of public health, which led him to think about the environment. And in his essay, Ecology and Revolutionary Thought, in the early 60s, really starts tying these things together. So then in the 60s, you have the new left, and you have a shift from the old left to kind of away from the worker center movement to civil rights, Black power, anti-war feminism, other kind of areas of social protest. And and this kind of creates a whole nother realm of possibility and way of thinking. So there are kind of two primary trends where this goes. And one, you have kind of a Marxist takeover in the SDS that, one of Bookchin's, which is the Students for Democratic Society, one of the kind of most, probably like the quintessential organization of the 1960s counterculture era. You have them kind of take a Marxist turn, and Bookchin's kind of national prominence is earned around this essay, Listen Marxist. And then you also have the kind of apolitical turn of kind of the counterculture becoming more about consumerism and whatnot and lifestyle. So those are some of the questions that kind of social ecology is developing in. In practice, in the United States, social ecologists were very involved in the anti-nuclear movement. And then also I should put anti-GMO as well. Then alter globalization is another period where the ideas of decentralization and democracy become at the center. And and I will note Murray Bookchin dies in 2006, and around that time the ISC loses its campus, so kind of there's a little bit of a decline in the early 2000s in the post 9/11 era, along with many other radical movements. But around Occupy Wall Street, you have another uptick in interest in radical democracy, and kind of the ideas, and Murray Bookchin's work gets kind of people start paying attention to it again. In the revolution in Rojava in northeast Syria, explicitly cites social ecology as one of its inspirations, which kind of also draws a lot of attention. And then municipalism becomes kind of a global framework for governance at the city level. So that's just a little of the historical background and context. And now I'm going to get into the theory. So these are three kind of core works of Bookchin's that, and social ecology is not just the works of Murray Bookchin. I think he sets a lot of the theoretical frameworks for it, but I have personally a lot of disagreements with Bookchin, and there's a lot of disagreements I have with other social ecologists who have disagreements with Bookchin. So there's a lot of interplay between these ideas, but these, he really put the kind of comprehensive framework onto what we're talking about. So there's three elements of this. The first is the philosophical background, then there's the social background, and then there's the political framework. So then that's how I'm going to sequence this next part. So dialectical naturalism is, in my view, one of the key distinguishing features of social ecology. And just social ecology is a grand narrative. So if you don't like grand narratives, you're probably not going to like social ecology. So I'll just state that up front. Around the time of the New Left, you have a kind of movement towards apolitical mysticism and kind of rejection of some of the kind of reason and rationality that are behind the technologies that are destroying the environment. Like the idea behind industrialized agriculture is putting science to use to, create more efficient agriculture. So a reaction that some people have to that is a rejection of science. And, that is something Bookchin was against. He was also against positivism or kind of analytical reason, which is very reductive, that capitalists use, in which they think that kind of a thing is just itself and doesn't have any ability to transcend that. There were, I'll go back to the debates with the ecologist parts, but the idea of dialectical naturalism is to develop an ethics. You've probably heard the term dialectics before, and just to kind of give a brief description of what that is a philosophy of change. It's a philosophy of totality that's driven by contradiction and potentiality. And the best way to explain it is with the example of an acorn. So you have an acorn, which a positivist might say it's just an acorn. That's all it is. But then if you're thinking about it dialectically, within the acorn contains the potentiality to be an oak tree. It also contains the potentiality to be eaten by a squirrel or rolled down a sewer drain. So there's nothing that is guaranteed based, and this is kind of similar to Emily's imaginal cells, if we think about potentiality as well in that way. So kind of what Bookchin is trying to do with dialectical naturalism is take a dialectical understanding to evolution to develop ethics. And what he sees in evolution is a process of participation and differentiation. So when organisms interact in an environment, the interaction between them is participation, and the development of evolution of species evolving goes towards differentiation. So going back to the question of how society relates to nature and how we're developing ethics out of this, we have this concept of first nature, which we would think of as the natural world, non-human nature, which has existed for billions of years and started off with single cell organisms, and now we have direct TV, so it's this process of increasing complexity. The first nature, organisms become more complex, and environments become more complex, and through the evolution of mammals, we get humans and human consciousness, and that's second nature. Is kind of human society distinct from the rest of the natural world while still being part of the natural world. That's kind of a critical part, is that although human consciousness has distinct characteristics, it is not separate from nature. And kind of the goal of social ecology is to build third nature or free nature, which is the kind of transcendence of the harmonization of second nature with first nature. So this, as dialectics is a philosophy of totality, you might say, well, there's many times that evolution doesn't lead to more complexity, such as eutrophication occurs where algae covers the surface of a lake and everything in it dies. That's not a process of complexity, but it's really looking at evolution kind of on a grand scale and its totality, and seeing that it's a general trend, not a rule every time. And kind of through this, the logic of differentiation is unity and diversity. This is a very quick once-over of dialectics and dialectical naturalism, but if you want more, Mason, the ISC program director, is teaching a course dedicated to dialectical thinking in September, so I can put the link to that down. So now, the second part is the social and anthropological framework. So the key question I'm sure you're all asking yourselves right now is, if humanity has the positive potentiality to harmonize itself with nature, and there's nothing fundamental about destroying nature, and the kind of pathway of evolution is towards greater complexity, then what went wrong? why are we simplifying nature? Why are we in a mass extinction event? You know, what has happened? And this is kind of the core question one of the core questions social ecology is asking. And the answer is that systems of social domination developed. And one of the key differences with Marxism is that to Murray Bookchin and I think many social ecologists, the idea of epistemology is another word for like the realm of thought and as opposed to like material, but that forms of social domination preceded the development of surpluses. So kind of in the conventional idea, you have what Marx called primitive communism in tribal society. And then when you have the Neolithic Revolution, you start developing surpluses, and then it's the control over those surpluses, which becomes the foundation of class society. And it's the antagonism between ownership over the surpluses that becomes kind of the core motor force of history. And the point that social ecologists are making is not that those questions aren't important, and not that that's not a key feature of history, but that there were forms of domination that were existing before that through priest classes or patriarchal relations or warrior classes that kind of existed before the development of surpluses that then like expedited the process basically of class society. And it is just as important to think about the subjective characteristics of domination as it is about the material relations. So we have this legacy of domination that emerged. You know, you think about ancient Egypt, ancient Sumer, ancient Mesopotamia, this kind of formation and crystallization of class society and hierarchy. But you also have that kind of developed to this day that we're living in. But you also have a legacy of freedom. And just because certain societies developed hierarchically, that didn't happen uniformly across the world at all times. And there was a lot of unevenness where some societies developed hierarchy and then rejected it later on. So there are ruins in Ukraine, for example, that show a massive like Bronze Age city that had no example of control over surpluses, yet it had a very complex social life based on its ruins. There's legacies of free cities and communes, peasant revolts. There's this really the image here is of the sun or moon, I think it's the Sun Temple, outside of Mexico City, in Teotihuacan, that is an extremely fascinating example. One of the few examples where a non-hierarchical society built such a massive thing. Usually non-hierarchical societies aren't building pyramids, but I guess this one did. Haudenosaunee democracy and so on. So there's a long legacy of societies that have either actively rejected domination or never developed it to begin with. The revolutionary tradition, the Marxist, anarchist, utopian traditions as a kind of conscious rejection of these forms of domination, and centering like the city as an arena for action is something that social ecologists push for. And before I move on to the politics, so you have this kind of natural critique, this philosophy, you have this social critique, and the ultimate goal is how do we get the good things from civilization without and harmonize that with nature. So it's not to fetishize like tribal society for being egalitarian. Like, you know, I there are many fruits of the modern world that I would not want to give up, but you know, we don't have to see those things necessarily in contradiction to a ecological society. So then before I get to the questions of how does this relate to solidarity economy, I just want to talk briefly about the politics of social ecology. So the politics again, unlike Marxism, social ecology sets the revolutionary subject as like the community, not just the worker. And this really develops out of, if we think back to the New Left and recognizing that, the movement of the old left of the kind of classic workers era did not end in the revolution, and people identify as much themselves as much greater than just their identity as a worker. You're also a mother, a father. You're also, there's many different ways people identify as. So just appealing to them as a worker is not necessarily going to create the type of holistic revolution that social ecologists are pushing for. And it sees radical democracy or direct democracy as like the foil for domination, that it's like through the process of democracy that we are in cooperation and whatnot. And it aims at developing community movements and democratic assemblies that would then federate with each other at kind of broader levels to form like kind of free cities that are linked and it's more complex than I have really the time to get into fully now, but I can provide some further reading. And kind of the question is, how do we make these democratic spaces liberatory right now? Because as we all know, things are very reactionary at the current moment. And if we just opened up assemblies, there are a lot of people who are racist and, oppressive out there. So I think one of the questions that we're thinking about as we're organizing assemblies is kind of imbuing them with positive values of like anti-racism, of, non-domination and other ways through kind of organizing committees. So I'd be happy to talk about that more later. So why should we care about all this? That's a lot of pretty heady stuff I just talked about. And, we live, maybe you just got kicked off Medicaid, or, you can't afford groceries. It's like, why care about all that when we have immediate problems? And I would say that there's many reasons, but I think when we have the potential to develop a truly free society that is really wonderful and has like amazing potentials. I mean, think back to what you were thinking of when Emily had you close your eyes and envision what your free society looks like. And this is more than just gigawatts of renewable energies that we can, of like solar power that we're going to generate, or more than just, CO2 that we're going to get out of the air, but it's like a fundamental thing of like what freedom means and what life is about, And I think in order to build a movement to do what we need to do, we need to have an ethical framework. I don't think Bookchin did finish the job. I think he kind of answered some provocative questions, put us on the right track, and that we need to keep developing the work. And there's another kind of point I take from James and Grace Lee Boggs that really centers my focus on this, which is that in order to have like the right politics, you need to develop ideology, and you develop ideology, you need to have the proper philosophy. And the kind of way of developing philosophy to ideology to politics is how you kind of create the frameworks you need to make transformative movements. And as I've kind of alluded to, as opposed to kind of Marxism that focuses mainly on material relations, social ecology focuses a lot on politics. And we live in a time, there's a phrase that I've been interested in lately called anti-politics that I think Trump and fascists generally embody, which it's kind of, because what is politics but the mutual decision making? And what kind of anti-politics does is kind of divest the individual of decision making power. And there's kind of this way that it's kind of turning over your own ability to participate to another while kind of like rejoicing in the it's kind of like putting the thumb in the eye of the establishment a little bit, even though the establishment itself isn't democratic. You know, I do think that politics right now is we need to be kind of advancing politics at this moment. So how does this relate to solidarity economy? There's kind of a few ways that that I see this. The first is the shared value, strategies, and tactics. So Emily highlighted solidarity, democracy, equality, sustainability, and pluralism. I think those are all completely in line with social ecology. And where I think social ecology can add to solidarity economy is more attention to the public sphere and kind of the political organizations kind of outside of economic relations or like productive relations or housing relations, kind of where I think solidarity economy can add to social ecology is thinking on economy, because you know Bookchin shifted towards politics away from economics, but I think he kind of overcorrected in that regard, and that I kind of see if the ideal future for social ecologists is realized, the economy would be a solidarity economy. It would be a kind of solidarity economy. And then the last thing that I didn't fully get into in the talk of politics, but I want to cut off in just a minute to let time for questions, is the importance of place-based democratic assemblies. And this kind of goes to the public sphere. I think if we're going to build the type of movement to overthrow these forms of domination and fascism, what we're going to need to do is organize people locally through assemblies that kind of connect people and form like the basis of a dual power. So yeah, I think I'm just about at time now, and I've talked a lot at you, so should probably learn from Emily how to integrate some participatory aspects of my talk. But yeah, I will stop it there, and am happy to yeah, excited for your questions, and thank you all for joining me.
I think, Rob, there's one question in the chat for you already from John.
John asks, Rob's slides suggest to me that according to social ecology, indigenous peoples already embody third/free nature, correct? So what does ISC suggest in supporting and following the lead of these communities here and now? If so, what does this look like? So I guess I wouldn't want to be like reductive and just say like, you know, just kind of have a view of, I don't want to have a monolithic view of indigenous people. You know, there's many diverse practices that indigenous communities have over the world. I think there's many examples of like what we might call indigenous people living in a third nature, or like kind of relations that we aspire towards globally, but I don't want to just kind of make blanket statements about that. So, but I think what does ISC suggest in supporting and following the leads of these communities? So, I mean, I think there is a lot that can be done in that regard. I think, you know, a formative moment in my political development was the Standing Rock, No DAPL, you know, movement. I think their, you know, native land is continuously under threat. I mean, also centering indigenous sovereignty in our movement frameworks is a very important thing we can be doing, because I think there's, I don't have the statistic exact, but I think it's like 80% of global biodiversity is protected by like native land makes up only 20% of the global land, but I don't even want to. There's I'm trying to cite statistics I don't have in front of me, but yeah. So I think centering leadership with indigenous organizations and groups, and then being in solidarity with their movements, and yeah, those are some ways. At the ISE intensive, we'll have several indigenous led organizations, so I encourage you to come to that, and you can ask them or ask some of them yourself. So yeah.
A bunch of questions came in. We start with Emily on the question of worker cooperatives, a place to start. And I know Rob may have some thoughts on that too. Oh, you're muted, Emily.
Yeah, it's a place to start, but it's not the only place to start. Right. I think this is a moment where we need to really just fire on all cylinders, right? Like, so sometimes people are like despairing, or they ask, how can I get involved? Because there's no co-ops, or there's no CLT, or there's no social currency, or whatever. And I say a big part of what we need to do to build a solidarity economy of whatever stripe you choose is the work, the importance of culture, right? It's how we are, how we relate to others, how we relate to other human beings, how we relate to other beings, how we relate to Mother Earth. So simply being a little bit kinder, more compassionate, more patient in terms of our human interactions, being a little bit more open-minded about all different kinds of perspective, being open to our place in nature. Like, these are all things everybody could do anytime. One other thing that I will say is one element that I didn't pull out that almost all of us are involved in already in terms of solidarity economy practices is care labor, right? Especially unpaid care labor, right? Whether you're raising your kids, or you're helping your siblings, or you're taking care of your parents, or you're taking care of your friends or your neighbors, right? This is care work. And if you have to pay somebody to do all of that, it's like, it's enormously valuable economic work. It should be supported through policies. But just because it's unwaged doesn't mean that it's not important. But we almost all of us engage in that, right? So there are so many entry points into solidarity economy practices. I do find sometimes there is a problem of conflating the definition of solidarity economy with cooperatives, and it is a place to start among many, and we should absolutely avoid this making these two things equivalent. That is not true at all.
Yeah, and if I could just add on the worker cooperative question, I think they have limitations by being on the formal economy, almost like you have to file taxes, and you still have to make, if you're going to provide member benefits and high wages, you need to have the revenue to be able to do that. But what it does give you is space to practice democracy. So I talked about the epistemologies of rule, and how are we going to create the conditions to actually practice democracy, and the answer is to start doing it. And that's a place that can happen. And also many of the forms of oppression in society today are underwritten by businesses. Like, if you think about how many businesses donate to the police department, or contribute to politicians' campaigns and whatnot, so I think worker cooperatives, as Emily said, are not only the only part of solidarity economy, but in the fact that they do earn money in some ways, like more than a care network or something that is probably it is more transformative on a specific level, but worker co-ops ideally can contribute to left movements and solidarity economy movements, like hopefully like in through their having access to resources could be a way that connects. So
I would follow on that, and this is maybe getting into some of the questions. So solidarity economy also, there was a slide that I skipped over, which was about resist and build, right? So the way we think about solidarity economy, it's really a very big picture, big umbrella, big tent. It tends to be more focused on the build, right? Let's build forms of production, finance, ways of saving money, of redistributing money or capital, of right, like institutions and practices that are democratically owned and managed, right? But we recognize that there is like this really critical importance of connecting up the resist and the build. So that slide showed three overlapping spheres. There's the build work of solidarity economy, but also there's a overlap with the build work of social movements, right? And that's really important to be connected with. And then the third sphere is politics and policy. So we, the state is not withering up and dying anytime soon. So in the meantime, we have to work with what exists. So like engaging in on those fronts is also important. And then the fourth sphere that we ended up through the resist and build process of adding is the central importance of culture and art and learning, right? Because that's really what holds it all together, right? Building those kind of values and those kind of the culture that reinforces a whole different set of values than capitalism does. And mind you, all those values persist despite capitalism encouraging people to be individualistic, encouraging individuals to be self-interested, self-serving, maximizing their benefits, right? That the compassion, the altruism, the solidarity, the cooperation, the love persists, right? Because it's just part of human nature. Solidarity economy is all about saying, yeah, sure, that other side of us, Homo economicus, rational man, does exist, right? But we should build an economy and a society and a world based on both, right? That Homo economicus, economic man, and Homo solidaricus, right? That's full of love and compassion and solidarity. So like these are all the things that in this resist and build process that's been going on since 2020, it's a bigger tent. And the main work of the US Solidarity Economy Network, is really trying to say the build work without being connected to the resist work, the social movements, as well as the political economic sphere, and paying a lot of attention to culture. You can get so deep into the weeds and just trying to make sure that your business or your CLT or your whatever, your community garden survives, right? But it's really important to be grounded in, the resistance and people that are on the forefront of struggle. Conversely, that resistance, without having some clear vision of where they're trying to go, falls often into that trap of just reforming capitalism, because there isn't a clear vision of where to go. So it kind of gets into some of the other questions about value and how to build those communities. And of course, in reality, all this work, well, a lot of this work does have to happen on the local level. And if we really want sustainable communities that are resilient and can meet their own needs, we have to be building on that level as well, really thinking about building those local solidarity economy ecosystems.
Yeah, thank you. And to build on that a little bit and answer Liam's question of how should/can values be enforced and maintained in open assembly type settings. So I think, one of the reasons we are in the position we're in right now with the fascist takeover and this utterly inept like liberal party. I don't even want to call it a resistance party because they're not really resisting anything, but the movements in the past 20 years 30 years have been largely oriented around like street protests, which is important to demonstrate your opposition to something, but we need to be like building forms of community autonomy that kind of get us out of I think the question with a street protest is you're maintaining the political agency with the decision makers who are already in power and trying to say, you people in power, please do something different. And what I think the frameworks that solidarity economy and social ecology are trying to say is by taking control over our own lives, we are developing our own ability to make change. So we're not relying on kind of people who don't listen to us anyway. And then in terms of, assemblies, I think is one important place of building this political agency. I don't have a full answer to this, but what I would say is, there's a lot of assemblies are organized around a specific campaign. So let's say there's a toxic dumping in your neighborhood, or there's the water isn't good and that the city's pumping in. You can organize with your neighbors around a specific issue and like develop a campaign and have like meetings, assemblies about that. But I think what we're talking about is kind of ongoing assemblies that are not specifically issue based, in how and so like if you're against toxic dumping, the kind of doing a campaign around that, the idea is everyone's against toxic dumping there, so it's kind of straightforward in that way. But if it's a more open-ended assembly, I think what you need to do is when you form your kind of like group of or 3 or 4 or 5 of you or however many you have to like found this, is to make very clear like what the politics are in interpersonal ways, and then scale it at a level in which those values are maintained, rather than being subtle about it and like not just or like growing too big. And that's one of the problems that happened in Occupy, is some of these assemblies kind of became too unwieldy. They also weren't specifically place-based. They were kind of in parks around New York City and around, but really centering the values and scaling at a pace, and you might think like the crises we're facing are so urgent, and the kind of long-term relationship building work it takes to build these sustainable movements go at a slow pace. And that's a contradiction that I think we're working through. But if we're going to develop transformative movements, we need to transform relationships, and that takes time. So I wouldn't get paralyzed by saying the problems are too big, and if we just start now, we won't have enough time. Like, we need to start now. People have been starting already. So, and I think we can make a lot of change happen quickly when we start doing some of this stuff. But yeah, trying to center that. So I'll stop there.
So I'm going to try to address maybe this question from Arthur. How can we build forms of organization that integrate these frameworks? How can worker co-ops be developed in ways that are embedded in place, based on neighborhood organizing as a way of building material resilience and democratic practice into larger project of community self-governance? So I'm going to talk a little bit about an example of building a local solidarity economy ecosystem. My day job as a co-director of Wellspring Cooperative, right? Our organization is a member of the People's Network for Land and Liberation, which is currently comprised of 6 nodes. the Cooperation Jackson, Community Movement Builders in Atlanta, Native Roots Network in California, Lake County Merrymaker in Idlewild, Michigan, and Cooperation Vermont. So these 6 nodes are all working on the same thing of building a local solidarity economy ecosystem for that, exactly for that resilience, being very cognizant of the rather great possibility that we're going to see system breakdown, right? So we're going to see things, global supply breakdowns happened during the pandemic. Other disruptions could be due to climate change. It could be like the onslaught of fascism and political unrest, etc. Right? Any number of things. There's lots of fragilities in our system. So how do you build that local resilience and some degree of local self-sufficiency, right? So our effort is to do that by, one, decommodifying land, like leveraging a community land trust model to decommodify land, put it permanently into a trust to be held forever for the benefit of the community, and to use it to, one, create and sustain affordable housing. So housing is one. Regenerative food system, right, is also a use of the land. Number 3 is just other forms of production, right? So that production might happen through a worker co-op, but absolutely interested in expanding the non-business forms of production, right? Can communities grow their own food? Can they start making their own clothing? Can they start building their own houses? Not necessarily as a business, not hiring and paying money to a business to do it for you, but can we build that capacity within communities to meet their own needs? Million ways to do that. The 4th element is digital fabrication. So we're very interested in all of these nodes. We're all building a fab lab, right? And so these are computer-aided design and manufacturing. So this, if you're not familiar with digital fabrication, it's mind-blowing, like Star Trek replicator kind of stuff that's coming down the pipe. And we really need to build a level of skill now so that we have community folk who can ride this technological wave as it's advancing at just a blistering pace. And then the 5th element is really centering the importance of culture, right? Culture and learning. So developing spaces where we can build that culture, build the relationships, learn together, celebrate together. So this is the ecosystem that we're all these 6 nodes are working on developing and building, and we're all at different stages. And as David Cobb, who is adding lots of comments in the chat, often says it's a what sauce, not a secret sauce. It's a, I'm forgetting what you say, David. Anyway, it's not a secret right now. It's a closed network while we find our feet. But we're certainly interested in other people who are curious about this model and might be interested in different ways building out these ecosystems. I'll stop there.
Thanks. Yeah, and People's Network for Land and Liberation is certainly one of the kind of formations I find most inspiring at this juncture, and I think is wholly aligned with social ecology that so I think there's a lot of collaboration there. And I see David had a question about potential future collaborations between ISE and USN, or social ecology and solidarity economy. I can see an ISE class on these questions because we're nearing time now. We have a little bit of time left, but I can imagine 8 full hour-and-a-half sessions with guest speakers and whatnot on really drawing out some of this stuff, which could be a really interesting thing to do. There's a question from Mike Nugent that's a very big question. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's long, but and don't think I'll be able to answer all of it, but it's kind of around federations, the connection between federations and local control, and how are we going to like deal with local decisions that impact regional or national things. I think this is really the question of the importance of ethics, and why I think dialectical naturalism and developing the ethics is very important, because like just because a community votes that they want to have apartheid doesn't mean that that's okay just because it's democratic. Like we need to have like specific values that we are willing to fight for. And I think that but I think in terms of, I think the various I think that some of these questions are hard to answer before it happens, but I think generally the distinction I think about is trying to between kind of local governance and then federation administration. So trying to like coordinate at the higher levels and make decisions that need to be like kind of ratified at the local level. So a big difference between how things are currently set up in a representative quote democracy is that you vote for someone on election day, you send them off to Congress, and the only time that you actually have political agency is when you step into the voting booth. Like the second you walk out of it, you're no longer like have political agency. You've given it to someone else to act on your behalf, and now they generally don't even care about. I mean, you have people like John Fetterman who have pretty much no willingness to or like accountability. But what we're saying is we're trying to like flip that on its head and saying the people that we're sending to the higher level, they don't get to make decisions on their behalf. They have to negotiate and then come back, tell us what they negotiated, and then we vote on that, and then we send them back again and let them know what our vote was. So that's kind of a different way of looking at it. And I know we're wrapping up, so I want to give Emily some more time to address some questions.
I do want to underscore that thing about values, right? Like we talk about these 5 values and that they're all important and they're interlinked, and every single one of those values could go very wrong, right? You can have sustainability that's completely undemocratic. You could have democratic participatory democracy that could be really racist or sexist or environmentally damaged. You can have equity is pretty good. I don't know how you could have equity that's really not sustainable. So if you go down that list, every single one of the values by themselves is not sufficient, right? It's this interlocking thing that's going to get us there. So I know very often there's a kind of to me it feels a little bit of like an obsession fetishism about democracy. I think if you just have democracy without the other values, it can go in a very wrong way, right? Majoritarian rule can be very damaging. Yeah. I guess one final thing that I would say in terms of there's been a few questions sort of lifting up the value of indigenous worldviews. And again, I completely agree with Rob. We don't want to totalize like their universal indigenous worldview, nor overly romanticize, but there are many lessons to learn. And I certainly know Solidarity Economy very much embraces the many indigenous perspectives without also saying this is the only way to have the same kind of dynamics, right? Like there are, again, not to get dogmatic, right? And this is the only way. And the only leaders, have to be indigenous people, right? Like that is very antithetical to solidarity economy. It's a big tent. We really, really, really hold that there are many pathways.
Yeah. As we kind of wrap up, I just want to, you know, recognize that, yes, what I tried to kind of cover all of social ecology in a half hour, which probably was a little foolhardy, but I think I encourage you all to check out our classes, and you can get in a lot more depth in those formats. And I want to also highlight again that we are doing a in-person event in Lexington, Kentucky in the first week of August, where these ideas will be talked about in much greater depth. One of the nodes represented folks from Community Movement Builders, which was one of the nodes of PNLL that Emily mentioned, will be there doing a workshop. We have other solidarity co-ops and other solidarity economy related organizations that are going to be there. So I just put those links in the chat. There's a in-person sign up, and there's also virtual. You can attend virtually and watch some of the sessions on Zoom, and to check out some of our classes. And also, if you want to just read the kind of, I think Ecology and Revolutionary Thought is a great kind of essay form of the questions that Bookchin would further elaborate. And yeah, I'll give Emily a time to kind of make concluding thoughts, but I really appreciate you all for coming out, and thank you so much.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here. I actually did just want to super quick answer. There's been a couple questions about AI and virtual world, and I guess what I would say really quickly is it is really, 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 really critical to fight that battle, right? To try to democratize that technology. And if we don't, it's not necessarily a battle. Like I said, like with the digital fabrication, it's mind-blowing stuff. We need to train our people up. We need to be able to access that and learn how to use that, because for sure, the big corporations are putting in their patents, right? And they're on top of that stuff, all of that stuff. It's really important for us, for all that stuff not to get enclosed by the big corporations. And with that, again, thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Rob. It's been really fun to hear your analysis and your social ecology in 30 minutes. That's great.
Yes,
Good
yes.
question.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I look forward to future collaborations and
absolutely.
So.
Thank
Great.
you so much. This was one of the most stimulating webinars I have ever been to. It was great. I'm really serious. I'm from New York City.
Thank you.
I'm from New York City. If I didn't mean it, I wouldn't say it. Thank you so much. Years ago, I went for I don't know, a good few days in Vermont when they did the classes there in the summer. I think it was 2017, but I'm not sure. It's been so long, but this was fantastic. I wish I had this thought processes here in Ithaca, where I am. Great, just great. Well, enjoy the sunshine before they charge that.
Music to our ears, no doubt. What a wonderful comment. Thank you.
You're most welcome. It makes me feel good to say something positive. So I will look for you guys again. It was
good.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Bye for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.